Hi everyone. Yes, it's been a minute. Thanks for waiting patiently on another video. Today I'm going to do a reaction to Will Smith's apology. So before we get started, just wanted to outline the three elements of how to apologize. It involves listening and reflecting on your own actions, taking responsibility sincerely and clearly, and never making excuses. So none of the I'm sorry, but whatever that excuse is. And lastly, is making the appropriate changes. So these three things make up an effective apology. We're going to listen to what Will Smith has to say and see if his apology meets those three elements.
Mhm. Why didn't you apologize to Chris in your acceptance speech? Um, I was fogged out by that point. It's all fuzzy. I've reached out to Chris, and the message that came back is that he's not ready to talk, and when he is, he will reach out. Um, so I will say to you, um, Chris, I apologize to you. My behavior was unacceptable, and I'm here whenever you're ready to talk. Um, I want to apologize to Chris's mother. I saw an interview that Chris's mother did, and that was one of the things about that moment. I just didn't realize, and I wasn't thinking, but how many people got hurt in that moment. So I want to apologize to Chris's mother. I want to apologize to Chris's family, specifically Tony Rock. We had a great relationship. Tony Rock was my man, um, and this is probably irreparable.
The way that this first question is set up is actually he answered that in a way to give him an out or a justification for why he didn't apologize to Chris at the Oscars. So he said he was fogged out or fuzzy. So right off the bat, there we see that he's not fully taking ownership or responsibility for his actions. He says a part of him was fuzzy, and my question is, what part of you, Will, was fuzzy or fogged out that night? Um, was it before the slap, during the slap, after? Were you under the influence? Is that what made you fuzzy? Is there some kind of dissociative mental health issue? Because his actions seem really clear and defined when he strolled up to the stage, slapped Chris Rock, and he strolled back down with a smirk. That doesn't indicate to me of being fuzzy or foggy. I really just feel like that was like a cop out answer to me. Another thing I noticed when he apologized just now to Chris Rock, he said that his behavior was unacceptable, but it's like he's trying to create distance from what he actually did. He's not identifying the actions for which he's apologizing for, which is one of the other elements of apologizing. You need to be able to say, you know what, I put my hands on you, I slapped you, that was completely unacceptable. He's just making kind of like a general or blanket statement of my behavior was unacceptable. Well, what part of your behavior was it? So he's not identifying that. And then it almost seems like he feels more sorry for the fallout of his actions. Like he's apologizing to Chris's mom and Chris's brother, Tony Rock. They had a close relationship, he says. And I think he didn't foresee all the problems or all the backlash that he would get in that moment. And so I think that is what he's most regrettable for. And it doesn't come across that he regrets actually slapping Chris.
Um, I spent the last 3 months replaying and understanding the nuances and the complexities of what happened in that moment. Um, and I'm not going to try to unpack all of that right now, but I can say to all of you There is no part of me that thinks that was the right way to behave in that moment. There's no part of me that thinks that's the optimal way to handle a feeling of disrespect or insults.
The only thing I'm going to say about this section is he's saying no part of me thought that was the right or optimal way to handle feelings of disrespect. Okay, so how did we end up here? Why did you do what you did? Every part of you got up from your seat, walked across the stage, raised your hand, slapped Chris Rock, go back to your seat, and then proceed to launch profanities twice. So I think there's a little bit, and this is could be unintentional because it sounds like he's still doing some work. Um, Hopefully, he's engaging with a therapist. It's slightly intellectually dishonest to say no part of me thinks that's okay, because if that was the truth, you wouldn't have done what you did.
After Jada rolled her eyes, did she tell you to do something? No. It's like, I made a choice on my own from my own experiences, from my history with Chris. Jada had nothing to do with it. I'm sorry, babe. I'm gonna say sorry to my kids and my family for the heat that I brought on all of us. To all my fellow nominees, this is a community. It's like I won because you voted for me, and it really breaks my heart to have stolen and tarnished your moment. I can still see Questlove's eyes. It happened on Questlove's award, and you know, it's like I'm sorry really isn't sufficient.
So, right here, Will Smith is directly contradicting what he just said in the last question. So, he said, no part of me thought that this was an acceptable action, right? And now he's saying, Jada didn't make me do it. I made a choice based on, my own experiences and history with Chris. And there we have the part of him that did feel justified in doing what he did. The part of him that has experiences with disrespect, insults, not feeling good enough, or feeling like a coward. That part of him was triggered and activated. The part of him that has some type of history with Chris, that there's his justification. At this point, I would just throw the whole apology away. Um, Simply, he could have just said, I want to apologize to Chris. I should have never put my hands on you for any reason. It is not acceptable at all. I'm deeply sorry for that, and I'm going to do the work to make sure that I never do anything like that again. I want to apologize to people that my actions indirectly impacted, and I do, promise to do the work so that I can make sure I have better control of myself and my emotions. I mean, something simple as that, but we have a lot of justifications, and he is spreading his apologies around to a lot of people. And I think only about a sentence or two was really directed at the actual victim in this whole scenario, which is Chris. Everyone else is like, that's neither here nor there. Chris was the one directly impacted. Everything else was like secondary or indirect, but it seems like he's focusing heavily on these other relationships. So I actually want to do a flashback to his Oscar speech immediately, well, not immediately after the slap, but in the course of the evening. See what he has to say there, and you can actually tell that his apology hasn't really changed much.
Richard Williams was a fierce defender of his family. In this time in my life, in this moment, I am overwhelmed by what God is calling on me to do and be in this world. Making this film, I got to protect Ingenue Ellis, who was one of the strongest, most delicate people I've ever met. I got to protect Sanaya and Demi, the two actresses that played Venus and Serena. I'm being called on in my life to love people and to protect people and to be a river to my people. Now, I know to do what we do, you got to be able to take abuse. You got to be able to have people talk crazy about you. In this business, you got to be able to have people disrespecting you. And you got to smile and you got to pretend like that's okay. But Richard Williams, and what I loved, thank you, D. Denzel said to me a few minutes ago, he said, at your highest moment, be careful, that's when the devil comes for you. It's like, I want to be a vessel for love. I want to say thank you to Venus and Serena. I just spit. I hope they didn't see that on TV. I want to say thank you to Venus and Serena and the entire Williams family for entrusting me with your story. That's what I want to do. I want to be an ambassador of that kind of love and care and concern. I want to apologize to the Academy. I want to apologize to all my fellow nominees. This is a beautiful moment, and I'm not crying for winning an award. It's not about winning an award for me. It's about being able to shine light on all of the people, Tim and Trevor and Zach and Sanaya and Demi and Ingenue and the entire cast and crew of King Richard and Venus and Serena, the entire Williams family. Art imitates life. I look like the crazy father, just like they said. I look like crazy father, just like they said about Richard Williams. But love will make you do crazy things. To my mother, a lot of this moment is really complicated for me, but to my mother, she didn't want to come out. She's had her knitting friend. She has a knitting crew that she's in Philly watching with. Being able to love and care for my mother, my family, my wife. I'm taking up too much time. Thank you for this honor. Thank you for this moment. And thank you on behalf of Richard and Oracene, the entire Williams family. Thank you. Hope the Academy invites me back. Thank you.
So in his Oscar speech, he didn't seem too foggy to me, but he did make a slew of excuses for his behavior that night. I read that Will Smith is into what they call method acting. It's when you emotionally identify with the character that you're playing. You really dive deep into their psyche, almost like become that person. And I could tell that was the case when he said, you know, Richard Williams was a fierce defender of his family. So um, it's like he asked himself in that moment, what would Richard Williams do instead of what would Jesus do? And then proceeds to say, you know, God is calling me to protect and love people, but I don't think assaulting people is something that is an act of love. Um, he did mention having to take abuse and disrespect in his industry and that you're expected to smile and pretend that it's okay. So that's the part of him that wasn't okay. That's the part of him that thought he could do what he did to Chris Rock and it'd be fine. I found it interesting that he, you know, said Denzel told him at your highest moment, be careful, that's when the devil comes for you. And you know what? That part, I'm going to agree with it in this way. The devil was actually his unhealed childhood wounds and trauma. The things that you learn about yourself, whether they're true or not true, the things that we learn about ourselves in childhood through adverse situations, shapes how we view the world as an adult if we don't address those things. I have not read Will Smith's memoir, but I did see some excerpts floating around. I think one, he talked about feeling like a coward for not being able to stand up for his mother when his father would beat his mom or struck his mother. You know, I understand that he also outsources his self-worth to other people because as we're going to see in the next clip of his apology, he talks about disappointing people. So those are his kind of like pinch points. And what I tell people is if you don't heal your childhood trauma, it's going to show up. It's going to keep coming back to you until you deal with it. And unfortunately for Will Smith, it showed up on the night that was supposed to be the height of his career, that he worked so hard over the decades to get to that moment. And he kind of fell from grace. You also can see in this apology, he is saying sorry to the Academy and worrying about, you know, I hope the Academy invites me back. We know now he has a 10-year ban. One thing I want to say is that if you don't face your fears head on, you'll become what you fear. Will Smith is afraid of disappointing people. He's also afraid of being seen as a coward. And what he did, because he did not deal with his childhood trauma completely, it seems like there's still some issues there, is that he became a coward. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. It takes courage to, you know, apologize. It takes courage to not apologize when there's pressure to apologize when you feel that you didn't do anything wrong. I don't know who Will Smith is. Like, I don't, his apology is inconsistent. Did he mean to do it and he's just caving to pressure to not disappoint people? Did he not mean to do it and he just, like, I really don't know. But that's something that he is definitely going to have to work through.
What would you say to the people who looked up to you before the slap, or people who expressed that you let them down? Um, so there's two things. One, disappointing people is my central trauma. I hate when I let people down. So it hurts. It hurts me psychologically and emotionally to know I didn't live up to people's image and impression of me. And the work I'm trying to do is I am deeply remorseful, and I'm trying to be remorseful without being ashamed of myself, right? I'm human and I made a mistake, and I'm trying not to think of myself as a piece of shit. So I would say to those people, I know it was confusing. I know it was shocking. Um, but I promise you, I am deeply devoted and committed to putting light and love and joy into the world. And, you know, if you hang on, I promise we'll be able to be friends again.
So there's a lot to unpack here in this final part of his apology. I want to start with the phrase where he says, "I'm trying to be remorseful without being ashamed of myself." I actually want to deal with the dictionary definitions of remorse and shame just so that we're all on the same page. So, remorse is is defined as deep regret or guilt for a committed wrong. And you see here, shame is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior. So, in his effort to avoid feeling this shame, I don't know if he's going to be able to work through whatever it is that he's trying to work through. We can't stop feelings from happening. Feelings are things that come and go. What we can do in these situations is ask ourselves, like, what is this feeling telling me? I think there has been some work with Brene Brown where they've kind of defined shame a little bit differently. Like, shame is saying I'm a bad person, and guilt is I did something bad. And I think that's might be what Will Smith is referring to. And so, with shame, is not saying that you are a piece of shit, like he's saying. It's just saying, you know what, I feel some type of humiliation or distress based on an action that I have taken. And so shame comes first and then comes remorse. Like, you can't regret or feel remorse if you're not feeling pain or humiliation for behavior. So I'm kind of confused by that statement. And now we come back to Will Smith's central trauma that he says is disappointing people, letting people down. And this is where I had said previously, like, he is outsourcing his value and his sense of self worth to other people. You cannot live up to every individual's expectations of you. He has, it sounds to me, disappointed himself. I've never really figured out what it is he wants because he's always living up to what other people's expectations are of him. And as we know, you cannot please everyone. I think that central trauma showed up when he laughed at Chris Rock's joke at the Oscars. Jada was not amused, and maybe he didn't want his wife to be disappointed in him, or that combined with I have to protect my family, given that childhood wound of seeing, his mother be humiliated and put down. And so that is the central issue that he does have to continue to work through. Also, I feel overall that this part of the apology, he's really focusing heavily on how he feels and how tormented he is about the fallout of everything. And so that's not what an apology should be heavily focused on. Of course, you do feel bad if you're making an apology. I mean, that's the point, is that you want to express regret for something. But an apology is for you, in the sense of, like, it's for you to recognize where you need to take ownership and where you need to make changes. But the apology is not about you. The apology should be more focused on righting the wrong and expressing to the person that you've wronged what you did, taking ownership, apologizing, and agreeing to make future changes. And I feel towards the end of his apology, he gets more focused on, I'm just so torn up about this. I feel so bad. It's the same thing in the Oscar speech. I'm supposed to be a vessel of love. I'm this and I'm that. But, the whole point of this is I'm not sure that this apology should have happened. He's apologized. This would make time number 3. He apologized at the Oscars, but not directly to Chris. He apologized to Chris in an Instagram post. However, in this post, he's still making justifications for his actions, um, not really taking full responsibility or demonstrating a true remorse. Now, I say all of this to say, I don't believe in discarding people for, mistakes. We all make mistakes. And, I'm pretty sure Will Smith, he'll push through this. Time will go on. Things will be fine eventually. However, for his own personal betterment, I think it's worthwhile that he do a little more deeper, reflection and deeper work in trying to resolve some of these issues. I think I read a like synopsis of his book, or it was either on the front or the back cover, where it talks about his memoir, and it was noted that Will has mastered his emotions. And so I think that, mastery is something that is ongoing. So we're not going to be perfect. However, it just makes his book, or not his book, because I haven't read it, but it might make that statement seem a little less credible to someone when this was an issue that really should not have happened. Okay, you guys, so while editing the video, I came across this article that indicated an anonymous source said that Will Smith never wanted to apologize to Chris. Now, with these anonymous sources, you really never know the veracity of the statements. However, based on what we just heard from Will Smith's complete apology, to me, it didn't really sound 100% sincere. It was a little sloppy and inconsistent. Another thing I wanted to bring out is at the end of his apology, he tells people, if you just hang on, we'll be able to be friends again. One important thing I want to educate or talk about is just because you say sorry to someone, they can forgive you and still not want to have you in their life, or, put up whatever boundary that they feel they want to, and you can't, control that. It's not always going to be a forgive and a forget situation. So it sounds like Will Smith is still relying on other people's acceptance of his apology or that approval from others in order to feel good about moving forward in this situation. And so it just shows again, like, he hasn't really learned anything from the situation. How could he when the first element of apologizing is listening and reflecting? He hasn't been able to really listen to Chris Rock because, Chris has not decided to speak to him, and he doesn't have to. People can forgive someone and move on, and you may never get that closure or that chance to really listen and have some dialogue. He hasn't really reflected on his actions because every single apology he's given, there's been some kind of justification attached to it. So not completely taking responsibility about his actions and even clearly identifying the actions that he's apologizing for. And so without those first two, it really makes the third one very hard to do, the act of making changes, because what is there for you to change if you haven't clearly identified, listened, and reflected on your own actions? I want to hear from you all. What do you think about Will Smith's apology? Do you think it was effective? How would you have improved it? Just generally let me know what your comments are about it, and I'll see you on the next video.